Good morning, dear colleagues. First and foremost, I've got to say that there are not too many people who are interested in the infrastructural framework of Russia. And if we do not have audio and a video recording, we'd have just a very quiet conversation, because there are not too many people and you can speak up and say whatever you want. But anyway, for an hour and a half, together with our listeners and together with our speakers, we'll be discussing the topic of infrastructural framework of Russia. And since that is a general economic forum, naturally we are interested in the infrastructural framework not for the sake of it per se, but to identify whether the investment into the infrastructure and infrastructural framework in Russia are able to make an additional contribution to the development of the GDP, the economy, and if it is really possible to see what the contribution is. Today, here in the hall, we will see the speakers, Pavel Alexandrovich Brusser, who is head of the directorship, and he is working in Gazprombank, financing department. Mr. Prazdnichnykh, who is head of the department of the Center for Strategic Development, and here too we have Vice President of Russian Railroads, Salman Babaev. And today with us we have head of the Federal Road Agency, Mr. Starovoyt. And also we do not know for sure whether Viktor Alexandrovich Olersky will be here, the head of the Ministry of, actually of the Federal Agency for Marine and River Transport. But we'll see it later. Dear speakers, before we go over to the formal part, and discuss the content and start the dialogue with our audience, I'd like to ask you all one question. And please just cover this issue within 1 minute. If we speak about transport and the infrastructural framework in the broad sense of the word, that is a contribution to the GDP, we've been discussing for decades and decades whether transport is an independent sphere of national economy, or that is something auxiliary. And that is something which is being discussed not only in our country, and we've been discussing that for a number of decades. We'll try to answer this question, and we'll try to take into account the opinion of each speaker. And now please speak up for a minute. And well, Pavel Alexandrovich, we'll start with you. What do you think? Do you think infrastructure and transport, are they an independent area, or is that something auxiliary? Well, good morning, everybody. And being brief, I'd like to say that it is an independent sphere but it's quite another thing that this is the area which gives a possibility and actually on it the development of all other industries depends. As for the contribution to the GDP, well, I'll be speaking about that later, and there are quite a lot of opinions about that, whether there is an impact of infrastructural framework on the GDP or not. And I'll show you some slides on the basis of certain research data here in Russia. So you'll see that it is a contribution to the GDP. Well, thank you. Very well. Aleksey, please, your very brief answer, please. So it is a very interesting and a very sophisticated question, and I'd like to make a couple of comments. I'll start with the regions first. Over the past 10 years, I've been working very actively with the regions, and well, speak into the mic, please. Yes, and If we speak about the regions, the infrastructure for certain regions is a supporting industry, and for other regions, that is the point of growth. So that means that some regions are, actually participating as a transitional point. And if we speak on the whole, there are three key goals. Unequivocally, infrastructure, that is one of the industries where we create value added. The other thing is that infrastructure is necessary for the competitiveness of other industries. And the third point is that it is the top of the iceberg, and with it come quite a whole chain of suppliers and suppliers of equipment, machinery, and services. And given the fact that technologies are changing very quickly, so this particular industry demands new technologies. And for that matter, for Russia, unequivocally, that is a point of growth, and that is the basis for the development of other industries. So is it independent or not? Let us say that infrastructure, that infrastructural framework, that is something which is independent but closely related to all other areas and sectors. So we've got to consider all together. So we have Dmitry Vladimirovich Pankin, chairman of the board of directors of the Eurasian Bank. So, Dmitry will now give the floor to another speaker, but you'll speak about that later. So the question is the infrastructural framework an independent sector, or is it not? So we've been discussing that for a number of years, for decades, but anyway, we're discussing that again. So now we give the floor to Salman, and please give your answer to this question: auxiliary or independent? Well, okay, I wouldn't call it auxiliary or independent. That is vitally important. So for any area or any territory, for the state, the country to develop and altogether to exist. So if any commodity would have been sold, locally, and nobody needed to take it anywhere, then we could say that that is something auxiliary. But, without transport, I think that, people may live only where there are means of communication, and means of transport, be it air transport or whatever other transport. Well, without that, people cannot live. Without roads, people just do not exist without that. So how can you say whether it is auxiliary or not? Well, that is vitally important. There is no life without that. So I'm from Dagestan, and there are no roads there. And we know that, actually people live in enclaves, and it is very difficult to exist. Well, the roads join people, they create possibilities for people. And we can go back to the history of Greece, the Silk Way. So how can you call them auxiliary or independent or the main? Well, you cannot use such a term. Well, transport does not produce anything on its own. It produces services, and it brings commodities to those places where the commodity is needed, and it participates in the creating of the self-costs of the commodities. Well, that is my answer. Very well. Thank you very much, Roman. The floor is yours now. That is a very good question for warming us up. Thank you, and that'll wake us up. So my opinion, I'd like to side with all my colleagues who spoke before me, but I think that we've got to speak about a separate sector, transport, And then you mentioned transport infrastructure. I would subdivide these two concepts. Well, transport, that is quite a separate sector with regard to transportation of cargo and passengers, and quite a different story is the creation of transport infrastructure. In fact, that is the construction, that is the creation of marine infrastructure, railroad, motorways, etc. And transport machine building. Well, for the transport to work, we've got to create airplanes, vessels, etc. So that is my understanding. And proceeding from my answer, no doubt that the contribution to the national, to the GDP, certainly it has a great impact. So the same way as the construction has its impact and the development of machine building. Thank you very much. Now, Dmitry, the same question to you. So this term, auxiliary and main, independent, I would not use these terms. It is rather strange to use them. Well, what does it mean? The main sector or the auxiliary sector? The infrastructural sector is part of the economy which creates the GDP as any other sector. Thank you very much. Well, in the commentaries of the speakers, we heard that the question itself is not very smart, but since this particular forum is devoted to the economy and to the development, and going back to the recommendations of the World Bank, we should recollect that one of the recommendations is with regard to the development of the national transport infrastructure, and it should determine first and foremost its significance in the economy of the country. And the next point says whether it is auxiliary or whether it is the main sector. So, and the World Bank continues this discussion, and maybe that is not something which should be discussed with regard to China or Russia because of the scale. But anyway, that is the question that people are discussing. So, dear colleagues, we have the presentation of Aleksey Prazdnichnykh, and it'll be the start of our discussion. How much time do you need, Aleksey? I believe that I'll try to use some 5 to 7 minutes. Dear colleagues, just a few words by way of introduction. I represent the Strategic Development Center and I coordinate space development. And that is one of the areas for the development of the strategy of infrastructure in Russia. So I'm not going to speak about transport infrastructure per se, but I'll speak about those ideas which are related to the role of transport infrastructure with regard to territorial development. That is not purely a transport issue, but it is closely related to the development of the regions and to the economic development of the country. So I'd like to cover 3 questions. First, the way the infrastructural system looks from the point of view of international ratings, which is quite a fashionable topic. The challenges and possibilities we have with regard to capitalization and development of the infrastructure and regional development. And the third part is strategic directions which we're discussing in the Center for Strategic Development. Dear colleagues, I'm afraid this mic does not work. It seems to be working. So let us take a look at next slide. So the format is PDF. So the very first speaker is not very lucky. It happens everywhere. So what can you see in this slide? As I mentioned, it is quite fashionable to use various ratings, and here we see certain facts and figures with regard to Russia in comparison to other countries, and on the basis of certain indicators with regard to transport and certain other indicators. First and foremost, that is infrastructure per se. So you see it as railroad infrastructure, automobile transport, aviation, marine transport. The second part is in transport and logistic operations. And the third part is very important, though it is not directly linked to the first two. So that is the administrative barriers and how our transport infrastructure is integrated into the international economy. We can. So when the rating is calculated, actually all these issues are taken into account. And the last issue, the international integration into the world economy, that is something which is also important for it. Here we see a certain profile and the position of Russia. And in light blue, you see the countries which are the leaders or countries which lag behind Russia. And if you take a look at the infrastructure, we can see, and I speak about international comparisons, facts and figures which are being used for comparing countries and their economies. So if we take a look at the infrastructure, we see that there is a shift to the right. So that is exclusively with regard to railroad transport. With regard to all others, Russia is lagging behind. So transport services, that is actually part of the value added, which we can see, which is being created with transport infrastructure. The second indicator, Russia here is lagging behind. And if you take a look at the third one, the international integration, here Russian has even lower positions and low rating. There are trade barriers, customs barriers, and so on and so forth. So if you take a look at the graph, you can see how Russia looks against the background of other countries. So this is a rather theoretical slide, but the picture we see here is very, very important, and we see the link between the development of the railroad transport and the economic development. At the lower stages of economic development, it is naturally very significant to contribute more to the railroad structure. At the more developed level, other factors have a more role. So here you see this particular graph, and we see that Russia is out of this trend, and the quality of the road infrastructure is lower than it is needed from the aspect of the economic development. So if we speak about railroad transport, here, Russia has the greatest gap with the development and with other countries. You actually covered so many points that you do not leave room for other speakers. As a matter of fact, I'm not an expert in transport per se, so my goal is to speak about the economic development of the regions. It is too early to speak about that. You'd rather listen to all other speakers and then you express your opinion. As a matter of fact, I've been coordinating the issue of, well, the calculation of ratings and monitoring the international rating of Russia. And for 10 years, I've been looking at how the position of Russia is changing. It is certainly becoming much better. And the trend over the past 10 years is quite positive. But anyway, there is quite a huge gap. And the infrastructure of Russia, at least now, is not the driver which supports the economic development of Russia. So as for the general challenges and possibilities which we can see for the development of logistics system in the context of regional and economic development. So first of all, we've got to speak about the low level of development of road infrastructure, and whatever indicators we use, we have the same picture, whether those are statistic figures or the issues related to companies. The second thing is that the level of funding of road infrastructure is quite low.
The third important challenge underlines that any infrastructure implies that there must be several competing companies and multimodal hubs around the seaports, around railway terminals to ensure the integration inside the country. The fourth is inefficient regulation, including the regulation of the construction process. And the last one is the high cost of construction and low return on construction investments. Of course, challenges in some interpretation mean capabilities. And those capabilities imply the improvement of tariff regulation and higher efficiency of tariffs for all types of transportation. The second capability still unused in Russia is the attraction of investments, public-private partnership, or investment of budget funds. Next issue is the efficiency of trade and elimination of barriers in foreign trade. Unless we resolve this issue, transport will remain the supporting sector. Well, I understand that customs and customs duties is a different topic, but that's really a barrier for the development of transport. So, it is secondary to the transport, but it should be resolved at first hand. The next capability is the implementation of new standards. There are plenty of standards used in other countries in view of regulation, construction, investments, and we should not redesign them again. We should just profit from the existing examples. And the last point, transport has always been lagging behind the technical innovations, and only recently it has, let's say, the advanced development. I do remember that 10 years ago, many municipalities thought how to design a new system of taxi in the system and how to change the tariffs. But today, with all technologies, with big data, with capable servers, all these items are resolved much faster and much more efficiently. And the last slide, next one. what ideas, what concepts are being discussed. Once again, these are not projects, these are just trends of development. Four key items. It's the transport integration inside Russia, between the regions and inside regions, such as high-speed tracks and roads, accessibility of transport infrastructure for population, and there is a huge difference between the regions. In Moscow, you have easy access to all types of transport, while in Yakutia, for example, that's really kind of the headache. The next issue are the international transport corridors. Next are, let's say, transport and logistics clusters, and the last topic, which is widely discussed, is the higher efficient investments, application of new funds, new investment schemes, budgetary and off-budget funds. If we come back to international transport corridors, if transport is a sector per se, international transport corridors make an integral part of this sector and platforms for growth. We are discussing that in Russia quite openly and widely, whether we are competitive on the global scale and how open we are to foreign partners, and how we can shift from regulation and management of individual type of transport to the transport infrastructure as a whole. The third that I mentioned, transport is not built just for being built, but it's for the creation of hubs and clusters. And the fourth, for me, it's most important because it creates the basis for the development of all other issues. It's the improvement of governmental policy directed towards the development of transport infrastructure. That covers a lot of issues such as improvement of transparency and more dedicated approach to the planning and construction. So we are considering those four items, those four vectors of development: integration, international corridors, clusters or hubs, and higher efficiency for planning and implementation. So if we manage to succeed in the first and the fourth items, the second and the third will develop by consequence. So once again, it's not a strategy, it's not a project. These are some concepts and ideas that are being discussed and developed in the frame of my company. So it's a kind of warning against the possible criticism of my colleagues. Well, it would be logical to ask Mr. Starovoyt to speak next, and I hope that in his speech he will touch upon your statements. So, when you were developing these concepts, how did you estimate the availability of demand in our country. Well, to simplify, that would be strange to use several strategies, because on one hand, we have an advanced development, and even if the effective demand is absent, the government is investing funds. You know what is the meaning of local aviation, which is in many countries subsidized by the government, because when the effective demand is there, the infrastructure is already available. In some other concepts, the infrastructure develops with the growth, in parallel with the growth with effective demand. I think that we in Russia has already overgrown this strategy, because transport infrastructure is still an infrastructure, and often there is no direct link between infrastructure and effective demand. So in many cases, the infrastructure should be established first, and then the demand will come. So it's a question to all of us. Shall we take the advanced approach, or shall we close the existing gaps? So, Mr. Starovoyt, you can take the floor. How much time do I have? Because yesterday I spoke with you that I have, let's say, a shorter speech and a longer speech. Well, we have more time provided by organizers, and you may have 10 minutes. Well, that's quite logical to speak after my colleague, because I remember your slide comparing good and bad, and Russia, according to this slide, is worse than worst. We understand what challenges we face today. In brief, that's the ever-growing number of cars and trucks in the country. On the other hand, where our, let's say, the available budget is limited, there are some questions how to attract private investments into the development of our transport infrastructure, because every time I meet with my colleagues, we speak that despite sanctions, Russian banks do have funds that can be earmarked for the development of transport infrastructure, but we are lacking good quality projects. Construction is capital intensive and time consuming, despite new technologies and innovations used by contractors, and we still have not yet reached the upper limit on the efficiency of our road construction. We are not well integrated inside the country and outside the country due to low capacity, traffic capacity of our roads. And if we increase it, we will increase the transport potential of our country. Plus, sideway infrastructure is not well developed. Today, we have reached 41% out of 100 of necessary developments of the sideway infrastructure, and that's important to make users comfortable and safe on our roads. So today we believe it's a challenge. In the view of the above, we have proposed to the Minister of Transportation to develop a strategy for the development of the transport business in the Russian Federation till 2030. The contract to develop this strategy was executed last year with the Federal Agency for Transport Development, and the draft of this strategy was presented in December this year. We have printouts of this strategy. Currently, this draft strategy is presenting a concept, and we believe that it will be upgraded and adopted by a Minister of Transport before the end of the current year. We have a number of comments and questions to the draft of the strategy, and we have a midterm in the summer this year, and I hope that with the help of our experts we will be able to answer the majority of questions and concept. And the key idea of the strategy is the development of transport infrastructure inside the country, because we are lagging behind in comparison with our neighbor countries. The first task, the top goal is to create transport corridors and a network of high-speed roads. Today, high-speed roads are roads in categories 1A and 1B. We are in charge of 2.5 thousand kilometers of such roads. There are private companies owning such roads, and there are some regional high-speed roads. And of course, the number of these roads should be increased to improve the connectivity between the regions and make the transport efficiency higher. The next project are safe and good quality roads. This project is aimed to establish favorable road infrastructures in megacities, but it should be coordinated with a federal network of roads. Task number 2 in this strategy is the improvement of the life quality, meaning the reduction of number of casualties in traffic accidents and the number of traffic accidents as well, environmental protection, increase of the average velocity for automobiles and other indicators. Standards of transport accessibility. That's the snapshot of the current situation. We see how diverse the situation is. And here we must create the equal conditions for all regions.
So take a look at the next slide, and here we see our objective number 3, that is perfecting the government models. So this is not the first goal in my presentation, but I believe that it is one of the key ones among the issues to which we must give answers. And yesterday, Dmitry Medvedev spoke about that, and it is necessary to carry out a structural reform. And I think that, among other things, we've got to undertake it in the management of the road economy. So we've got to use the world expertise, and among the key indicators, we've got to have a number of projects for the development of road infrastructure, which will be implemented with the account of the increase of the life cycle, and the role of strategic goals on the basis of the project management is also essential. And we've got to take this into account. And naturally, the increment of MPV, it is also a key indicator in the developing strategy. And here is the 9th slide. And so that is a project implemented by the Federal Road Agency, and we've been working on that for quite a long time. And I'd like to say that in the contest for the project Olymp, we had 2 bidders, and the winner in the tender is actually the project which we are implementing. That is the building of the Crimean Bridge, and we structured this particular project well on the principle of project management, and our project took the 2nd place. Somehow we actually gave way to Rosneft with their project, but we had another nominee, that is the Department of Automobile Roads. South Baikal also participated in this tender, and they took 2nd place. And today we're structuring 2 projects which we started implementing late in the past year, and we know the problems about the balance of weight and a scope, and we've got to take all the essential indicators into account, because otherwise we will not be able to develop the existing projects. And another thing, with regard to privatization, it is necessary to diagnose the networks of federal roads. Today we have possibility to test and diagnose the quality of the roads, take into account the intensiveness of the traffic, and see what is the quality of the road, and what about the water quality near the roads. And I think that we'll be able to have such diagnosis over the period of 2 years. And starting with 2019, we'll be able, on the basis of objective data, to structure our plans with regard to the building of federal roads. So I'd like to remind you that we've got to bring all the roads to the normal, well, standard level. So if we take a look at the next slide, we see the stages of implementation. And the first stage is up to 2020. That is bringing all the roads to the standard quality, and the second stage is up to 2025, the implementation of the projects with regard to the development of high-speed motor communication between the major cities. Also monitoring of the quality of roads, and the third stage is completing the formation of the framework of high-speed roads. Here we see the effects of the implementation of the strategy, and it is quality, security and safety and speed. And here we explain each of the concepts, and it all leads to the quality of life, improvement of the quality of life of the population, and bring down the prices, and stimulating the development of the regions, the development of relationships with other countries, and on the whole, we are planning to raise the level of national security. And the 12th slide, we see here that we do have the necessary resources for the implementation of the goals set. And what we need is 7.8 thousand employees who will be implementing the exploitation of automobile roads. And we are planning to increase the roads by 3.8 thousand kilometers. That is federal significance. And it is necessary to increase the productivity of the road economy by 1% at least. Thank you very much. Two questions to you, Roman Vladimirovich, and you may answer them in any consequence. So, first, you said that we do have a lot more regional roads than federal roads, and naturally, if we speak about the road strategy, the strategy for the development of a road economy, so what actually happens, we do not have synchronized activity of the federal center and the regions, and due to that, the economy is losing money. Which I mean to say is we are losing money from investments in certain regions, and vice versa. We are not getting enough money in some other areas. So are we working in the concordance with you, or somehow we have 84 strategies, actually, meaning that in every subject of the Russian Federation there is a separate strategy. So now we're speaking about the general framework, and we're orienting ourselves to budget financing and maybe extra budgetary financing. So I understand that you are developing the strategy and you have certain ideas about that, but certainly there must be a lot of discussions with regard to that. So today we do not have an answer to the second question, certainly, and the attraction of private investment is something essential and we must have that. And financing should be increased as compared to what we used to have. So because we're actually at the very start of the road, but we do have funds and the banks are saying that they do have money, but we have to structure our work in such a way that the funds should be used properly and properly invested. I did not quite understand the question with respect to lack of synchronization of our effects. Well, as a matter of fact, at least in our documents, we have this synchronization. region. But as for the funding, well, the level of funding is so low for the purpose that the Federal Road Agency didn't start any new projects in the past 2 years. We are actually implementing the old contracts, which were concluded in the year 1913 and 1914. So we hope that new projects will start and they will start being implemented. But what we see in the regions, well, on the average in the countries, well, we actually have only 14% of construction as compared to what we need to build and construct. So we expect that the strategy which we are presenting, or will be presenting, will allow us to identify priorities for our development, for the framework, and naturally we've got to coordinate both the federal projects and regional ones. Thank you very much. In fact, my question related not so much to lack of synchronization between regional and federal financing, but to lack of synchronization in the strategies. Well, do you have this synchronized strategies? Yes, we do have this synchronization in the strategy. We do have certain active regions which have an appropriate managerial resources, governance resources, and they're implementing more projects for reasons we all understand. And I'd say that we have the same picture, actually the same situation in at the federal level. There are certain agencies which are working very actively, and they can prove the necessity of this or that project. And our goal is to identify objective methods for prioritization of the projects, and we'll be able to combine strategies at the regional and federal level. So, if I may, I give the floor to Salman Rasulovich. So, you spoke of more positively about Russian railroads and railroad infrastructure, but on the other hand, we see certain negative assessments in the press and mass media. And, well, please say a couple of words about the infrastructural framework with regard to railroads. Thank you very much. Once again, I'd like to say that my colleague spoke in a very clear-cut manner about the drawbacks and the benefits of our transport system. Railway transport, differently from river transport or marine transport, we should not really consider that separately, because all that is linked. Either at the very start or at the very end of the way, we come to the sea, and we have to use marine transport. So, well, certainly we see that quite a lot has changed from the Soviet times, and we wouldn't say that we have sufficient railroad infrastructure. Well, actually, starting with 1977, we have very considerable limitations with regard to railroad infrastructure. Well, today the country exports a lot more goods, And sometime before, under the Soviet times, well, Russia sold, well, 120 million. Well, actually, the volume increased, actually doubled. And when we speak about the Far East, the northwest and the south of Russia, we see that today we have certain limitations with regard to transport, railroad transport. And we're trying to work on that and trying to invest money into the development of roads to actually be able to transport the volumes which we have. Well, unfortunately, we do not have Mr. Olersky today because he would speak in every detail about the ports of the former Soviet Union, and other countries started to develop the ports and the marine infrastructure. And for us, we have quite a lot of difficulties. We see that there is a disbalance. Certain directions are overloaded, certain other directions are underloaded. For us, it is very important to bring down the self-costs, to economize on funds and to use the funds we saved for the development of the south of Russia. And we have already transported over 10 million tons of cargo in the south, in the Black Sea basin. We are going to develop other areas, and we are certainly implementing our goals, and we are certainly planning to do that. And as for the speed, well, actually quite a lot has been said about that, and I'm not going to repeat things. But in 2012, for instance, I do remember that we had the session of our board of directors, and we actually developed the concept for the development of clusters. Well, it is not a normal situation when Moscow cargo is actually now transported by motor roads to Sverdlovsk or some other areas. Railroads should operate here. So, and in fact, we need certain clusters where we should concentrate the cargo and redistribute it for different means of transportation. That is something which is very difficult to do. We developed this infrastructural framework the way we understood it, and we have the documents with regard to that. But as for the public-private partnership, well, that is something which we have to think of. Who should be active in those clusters? Automobile sector or railroad sector? Should there be a special agreement? What is the role of the government here? And these are the issues we've got to consider and to resolve. And the final point is the transit potential of Russia. Well, as a matter of fact, Russia is situated between Europe and Asia. Well, there are container transportations via Georgia, well, by a seaway, by the Caspian Sea. That is all well, very difficult, and the economy cannot really cope with that. But if we have a Trans-Siberian Railroad, that would be a great help for us. And China, by the way, is building over 3,000 kilometers every year of railroads. and they're leading in high-speed transportation. And today, well, they're actually ranking first in this activity. We also have, well, actually, the issue of transporting containers from Europe to Asia and from Asia to Europe. So, it takes us long, 45 days. That is actually the time we need to transport our containers to Rotterdam or Amsterdam. But we managed to prove that from China we managed to take our container trains in the period of 14 days, just a fortnight.
If we come back to the creation of Silk routes, similar ways, container clusters for the redistribution of goods, if we implement all that, we will reach the global level of 9%, which is spent by other developed countries on transport logistics, while currently we spent 18% on the transport logistic. So that's what our goal is. Thank you. But, Magomed Rasulovich, I've got a couple of questions to you. When we started to speak about the infrastructure framework, Aleksey said about competition between types of transport. You spoke about roads, railways, and I think you should have added the air delivery. But where is the border between mutually profitable cooperation and good competition? And say, where was the borderline between good and bad competition? You mentioned the difference between road and railways transportation. The same can be said about seaports. If we speak about long distances, it's a competition with delivery as well. So when, let's say, cooperation changes into competition, well, according to our computations, if the haulage makes from 600 to 700 kilometers, delivery by trucks is more efficient and more comfortable. But we are speaking about consumer goods. We're not speaking about, say, raw materials. And for that type of haulage, we don't see the competition even with railways, and it's not our goal to compete with railways. If we speak about long distances, we believe that railways are more efficient, and we try to be competitive. Speaking about maritime deliveries, we can compete only in, say, cooperation with ships, because, let's say, we cannot compete in view of the capacity and load. But there are some places there are of goods origination which require the combined delivery by sea vessels and railroads. And plus, we have plenty of rivers. Before 2007, we had a very good cooperation with the river vessels to deliver bulk cargo. And it's a pity to see that the Siberian ports are underused. Yeah, because I'll say if you go to Europe and you see that on Danube, there is really this massive deliveries by vessels. Who should regulate? Who should, let's say, coordinate this cooperation and or competition between different types of transport? Shall it be by the market hand or by the government? Already from the beginning of this century, I tried to establish the competition at least on inside the railways, but I don't see how we can manage. Okay, we can put the parallel track to the existing ones, but you cannot count or you cannot compete in terms of railway cars, because the car, it's a part of a train, and the infrastructure, all the terminals, stations, all the signaling system will be the same. So that's difficult to answer your question for me, because I'm always accused that I'm against competition. I am for competition, but in the right place, because competition is a tool to improve efficiency and to reduce cost. And if competition helps to reach those goals, I would only welcome the competition. But if competition will hinder the achievement of these goals, I am against competition. So, speaking about current Russian railways and car roads, as soon as we let's say managed let's say to arrange proper payments like Platon charging system. I'm sorry I did not hear your warning that we should not mention this charging system, Platon. But in any case, I will not say this word, but I should mention that that became a very positive innovation for good competition, because we on railroads, we pay for the infrastructure while trucks or truck drivers were not paying for it. Now the situation is more balanced, is with the equal terms. But we cannot always rely on the market forces, because for us it's not a civilized market, but it's a market, it's a bargaining place. Aleksey, did you compare the infrastructure in the country?
We shouldn't be accused of trying to drive a wedge. Here we started to work on the bilateral, we went all around.
There is international comparison between different types of transport, but we have not yet tackled this issue, though I do agree that it's important. Dmitry Igorovich, I would like to give the floor to you, because you are an experienced financial expert, and you were able to monitor this as an outsider. Now you are an insider, you are a member of the bank. So can we finance this project? How they can be financed? Please don't speak about sanctions. That's not a good excuse anymore. But I'm speaking about the financial capabilities and legal structure. Listening to the discussion of my colleagues, I would like to make the first comment as an ex-official of the Ministry of Finance. When we speak about the need to have an infrastructure, it reminds me one of the communist ideas. Let's leave up to demand. Let's build roads, bridges, and so on. Also, if we ask somebody from public help, they will also tell us about their needs. If we ask social security people, they will add up still more. And if we ask the same question about the needs people from Ministry of Defense, they will tell us more and more and more. But we don't let's say know how to cut this budget pie. All these needs are well justified. But if we ask the taxpayers, they will complain that they are paying too much. So we have to balance our needs and our possibilities. The majority of infrastructure projects all over the world are financed from the state budget. And we have to set the priorities. What's more important for us? To build new schools, to purchase vital drugs, or to construct new roads? All these questions are really important, but we don't have answers. It goes without saying that lobbyists are always present, and they impact the allocation of the budget. That's not only now true for our country, it's like that everywhere. So the key issue is how much money we may ask for the development of infrastructure. Well, coming back to our current position, for any bank of development, project of infrastructure development is one of the key issues. You know that the Bank of Investments was created in China with the proposal to spend $100 million annually for the development of infrastructure. In some countries, banks of development play important role. For Armenia, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, finance from 20 to 30% of infrastructure development cost. For us, as for Eurasian Bank of Development, top priority is given to transnational, transboundary corridors between Russia and China, or globally speaking, between Asia and Europe. today we review such projects as Meridian. It's a road from Kazakhstan to Europe, and a competing project also linking Europe and China. We try to compare and to combine these projects with railroads. We have interesting experience in Armenia, Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan, jointly with Asian Bank and World Bank. I speak about the construction of the road in Armenia, south-north. We jointly co-finance with Asian Bank construction of roads in Kyrgyzstan. What experience can be drawn from our or what conclusions can be drawn from our experience? First of all, a systemic approach to the analysis of transportation projects is a must. So, all strategies of development should be taken jointly, meaning that the project of a new road should be linked with the construction of a rail road and infrastructure and supporting systems. So you should take a region as a whole and think in terms of hubs and think in terms of interoperability and interchangeability. The second item that I would like to highlight is competition between different types of transport. If there is a motor road, it does not mean that construction of a railroad is out of question, because if there is demand, if there is cargo for rail cars, why not? Let's take a very, let's say, notorious example, Moscow-St. Petersburg, with huge traffic, and these two cities are connected by air routes, rail roads, and mud roads, and that gives a choice for a consumer, and it helps to compete carriers between themselves. The next question to be answered based on my experience: how to choose a project and how to fund it. If it's a private project, we just have to calculate the internal rate of return and the rate of profit, but that's quite difficult computations for a transport project. Concession projects that are currently very popular and are attractive for banks. We participated in Pulkovo project, but actually this is funding against state guarantees, because concession payments are actually guaranteed by the state. So it would be quite conventional, to call it investment project, because the banks are really not taking risks on these projects, because the government is responsible for everything. So the question still remains how to calculate which project would be more efficient and which project is more attractive from investment point of view. I can give an example how the World Bank is making these calculations. So the first item to compute is the reduction of time in travel. So let's assume that 1 hour is creating $10 in GDP, so or consuming $10 in GDP. So if we reduce this time in travel, how much will increase this GDP? If we improve the quality of the road, what will be the reduction of car maintenance costs, and what will be, let's say, reduction in traffic casualties, because if a person dies such and such many working hours are lost. How many workers will be involved in the construction? So what will be the added value to GDP? That's all is computed, and the final indicator is the sum added up to GDP, and the same computation is done for any project. That's very conventional approach, but at least it is some approach. It can be criticized, it can be altered, it can be upgraded, but at least it gives some platform for comparison and for decision making. So this is the methodology used by the World Bank. International banks of development are extremely important for the solution of transport projects. What are the pluses of such banks? Because the majority of projects cannot be resolved within a country. Currently, we speak about transport corridors, China, Kazakhstan, Russia, Belarus. So we need a coordinator who will manage issues arising in different countries, and this super national organization would be best suited for such coordination, because handling customs issues, various standards and related issues would be easy. Secondly, experience of international companies in holding transparent tenders is also very important, because usually international companies has higher requirements and higher standards than national organizations, and very often we refuse projects if tendering is not made properly according to transparent rules.
So that is the usual practice for the international development banks. And the third point, that is technical expertise. And the development bank brings with it experts, hires them, and they can give a more interesting technical solution. Specifically, we could see that when we introduced the western transport diameter, and when we worked on Pulkovo, quite a lot of interesting technical solutions were found. And I've got to repeat that the topic of transport infrastructure is very interesting and very essential for us, and we'll continue to work in that direction. And How do you see the transport infrastructural projects? Do you think that you are a 100% creditor, or are you a participant of a certain pool? And what is the role of your organization in the pool? Well, with regard to huge projects, that is a pool. That is actually separation of risks, and where we're the leading company or we are led. Well, it depends on the scale of the project. Well, if, for instance, we are implementing a project for the construction of roads from China to Europe, well, certainly we'll not be able to cope with that alone. And we work with the Chinese banks, with the new Bank of Development, well, the BRICS countries bank. And as for the projects in Armenia and Kyrgyzia, we work together with the World Bank on them. And in other cases, if that is a local project, we may be a leading bank too, if there are no multi-billion figures. It all depends on the specific project. But most often banks set up a pool. As for the benchmarks for the investments, so somehow people tend to think that the attractive, appealing projects are within the interval from 400 million to and up. Well, but do you have certain preferences in your bank with regard to the project? Well, if that is a huge project, well, if that is 500 billion or million, sorry, so we will participate in the pool. So what really is important is the degree of risk. For our bank, we are not going to take a project exceeding 500 million. Well, if we are working in a pool with the World Bank, well, then we can tackle a project for some $10 billion. But that is together with the World Bank or with BRICS. It all depends on the amount of risks which the bank can undertake. The projects may be big, yes. Thank you very much, Alexandrovich. Well, I think that it will be quite reasonable if you continue speaking on this particular topic, and you'll answer the question, where is the money? And you'll also speak about the possibilities of the Russia's market to finance the infrastructure, which is very necessary for us. So you can get a point for money, since you're a financier. So, well, yes, I do understand that you just watch the film 17 Moments of Spring, well, about a Russian intelligence person during the Great Patriotic War. Oh, well, I'd like to speak about infrastructure. That is something which unites us, and my colleagues spoke about this topic, and since people tend to unite and to communicate, there will be always a certain demand for the infrastructure. The question here is, how is this demand created? And if the main client is the government, and if the government needs a road, well, the government is going to pay for this road. On the whole, well, for a certain term, well, when we were trying to develop this idea of public-private partnership, we failed to answer the question, well, whether we need this road or not. Well, if we speak about Himkinsky Les, well, if we speak about Platon project, well, I I'm a banker, and I consider the infrastructure as an asset and how appealing it is for investment. And, well, let us speak in general terms, not only about roads. The next question will be, who is paying for the road and where shall we get the return? So if the government pays and it orders, that is one paradigm. In this country, we have very rare projects which pay back. Well, Pulkovo, then RSD, and that's about all. Because, as a matter of fact, we get grants and we have the risk of government procurement. So speaking about the framework, infrastructural framework, I'd be so bold to say that we're moving to the situation when the population is going to pay more and more for a certain service. Well, and the population is not ready to pay for anything. Well, everything used to be, well, free of charge under the Soviet times. Water was free, television was free, etc., etc. So, and we've got to explain why people have to pay. So, and since the and there is another thing. If the service is of poor quality, then it'll be very difficult to explain people why they have to pay. So, and speaking about infrastructural framework, we've got to remember about certain factors which contribute to the forming of the infrastructural market. And I have certain graphs in my attachment with regard to economic development. Well, if you're interested, you can take a look at that. And Aleksey showed already one graph with regard to the regression broken up by countries. So, and the GDP indicator is quite obvious. The ideas about that are different. Well, some economists agree, some do not. But certainly we need new technologies. We've got to understand that self-costs should go down. And apart from that, all over the world there is a disbalance for the use of natural resources, the ecosystem, and the necessity of using them. So, and an elementary example is water. So, drinking water, pure water, well, to produce a plastic bottle, nobody actually thought about how much money you need to produce such plastic bottle. Well, in Europe, that is 2 to 3, well, a bottle of water costs 2 to 3 euro. Well, but if you recalculate in barrels, you'll see that water is more expensive than oil. So, and if you think in longer terms, you might see what we're going to have in some 20, 30 years. So the issue of resources, that is something which is very essential, and the issue of demand, that is also something which we've got to think about. What is that infrastructural infrastructural framework? So what is it? A public benefit. That means that when a certain individual is using public services and public benefits, he does not actually infringe upon the benefit of the other person. And to determine the cost of a good quality infrastructural service is really very, very difficult. That is not the Gazprom stock where you can calculate it, use the Marshall Cross, etc., etc. And, well, Dmitry spoke about the methodology of the World Bank, but in fact that is the methodology of alternative costs, which allows to determine the demand for an infrastructural service. And any service actually starts with the projections of traffic. And, there are polls of the population, and different age groups are used, and who is ready to pay for what and how much. And the tariff is calculated, the optimal price is calculated, and we see what is the price the user of the road is going to pay, or is ready to pay. And we've got to say that forming the infrastructural services market, and I do not agree here with Aleksey. He said that you've got to search for the instruments of funding. Well, I tend to think that in future the quality of the infrastructure depends on how this infrastructure is being sold. Is it possible to sell it? So do you mean monetize that? Yes. How are you going to monetize ready infrastructure? We're very far from this concept of the secondary infrastructure. So we have now Pulkovo, but Pulkovo, it pays back, fully pays back, and the city of St. Petersburg did not invest into it. Well, they are actually earning on the traffic. But such projects are very rare, and it is very essential to understand that we've got to develop such measures that the object which is created has actually passed all the serious risks. It should be packed, actually, and sold to a less risky investors with less profitability. And less profitability, that is actually a smaller load for the budget. So, well, going back to the effective demand, I'd put it like this. If we speak in terms of microeconomics, so here the price, the quality, and the public benefit, we can have two types of externalities, so positive and negative. The positive ones is what you see to the left from the E point. And if we have demand for the infrastructural service less than the supply, and vice versa. Let's take Platon. If you have the damage to the road or the damage from the road built, you've got to pay for it. So, then the costs may be redistributed to, let's say, railroad transport. So there must be a certain balance. But when you bring down the limited on the benefits for the population, and there are huge trucks which are taking loads to one way and going back without any load sometime later. So maybe I'll be too bold to say, but anyway, we've got to get ready to the situation when the population will be paying for any service. So, and if we subsidize the subcontractor, we actually should rather subsidize the end user instead of the contractor. So we've got to motivate the user to use this particular road. But the user cannot actually use, he does not have the money for using this particular infrastructure. So we've got to create effective demand. What we actually have is that, well, last week we discussed banks, subcontractors, contractors, users. Well, and we could see, well, not a monopolistic conspiracy, but when we saw that 90% nothing would get more expensive, and we were subsidizing a very narrow category of economic agents. Thus, we were introducing a certain contribution to the expectations of inflation. And well, perhaps and I believe that we have a disbalance. Well, the main client is the government, and the population will say, well, you're the client, so you pay, and we're not going to pay at all. So, well, I think that I've got to wind up here. Maybe, since I saw the presentation yesterday night, well, I had 2 questions immediately. In one of the first slides, you speak about the possibility of using new technologies. So all over the world, that is something which is very difficult. This attitude of financial structures to new technologies. And here in this country, it is particularly painful. So that is the first question. And the second question, well, it also was raised by my reading of the presentation. The level of risks for public at large. And as all Europe, we have the trend that the population will be paying for different services. That is, the payment for entering a city, well, payment for extra load, well, for certain car numbers, well, whatever. So there are similar payments in all other infrastructures. So public risks and the possibility that these public risks will put a brake on very efficient technologies.
Okay, I shall start with the first question about technology. So, are we speaking about banking technologies or technology as such? No, I was asking about the attitude of financial people to new technologies used in the project, in the construction. Well, for us, it's important that that's a proven technologies. Other, it will be a venture contract with unknown technology, and there are special funds for this purpose. Banks as senior lenders are rather conservative. So it's important for us to see that this is a proven, that's a tested technology, and we can assess those risks. No, I just misunderstood this question. Answering your second question, how persons will perceive it. No, I understand that that will be a very negative response. But how negative it might be, because if it's too much, we will just hinder the development of the country. Well. All those, I'll say, discussions about infrastructure projects, to my point of view, are linked to the fact that we are not well skilled in PR actions and speak with people. Coming back to this notorious Platon, we did it, but it should be done in advance. We should speak before. And if we start a project, this project should be discussed with people, and we should ask people, do you really need it? And a Pulkovo project that was coordinated by World Bank started with public discussions. First, a public service was made, and an environmental report was also made. So these were two components that must be integral to any project. And we should learn it, and we should integrate it into our activities. I heard once and I received the permission to quote, and he said that any infrastructural project, it's a mini election campaign, and if you failed, you soon will learn that you failed. Do you have any questions to speakers? We do? Yeah. Strange, because I did not think that we would have any questions to speakers. Good morning. My name is Dmitry Geraskin. I'm a graduate from RANEPA, and I majored in management of innovative projects. And now I work in the management company. So my question is the following. You spoke a lot about agile blue chain, and why didn't you speak about drones? That's really the trending topic that will make a revolution in the global transport, and that's the common opinion of many experts. How do you estimate the role of unmanned aircraft to improve the efficiency, mainly for cargo transportation? Why cargo? Because now, the longer you ask, the less time will be left for answer. I think I should address my question to Viktor Olersky and to Magomed Rasulovich. Or actually to everybody. No, who of you will answer? Today, to reduce costs, we cut down the number of local operators, relying more and more on automatic systems, but it depends on the distances. So currently, the local operator is just monitoring the operation of equipment, and we believe that with development of technologies, we can we can shift into unmanned trains. But it goes together with the security issues. And I do believe that there will be unmanned trains. Yeah. Today at say sorting stations, everything is computerized. But I don't see, let's say, a lot of savings. We will save on the salaries of local operators. Well, I didn't have enough time to speak about it, but we are implementing one of the projects which is called Caravan. We do it together jointly with our Finnish and German colleagues, and it's a project to create motor roads for unmanned vehicles. We believe that by 2020, about 10 million unmanned cars will move on the road. So my task is to match, to adapt federal roads to such unmanned vehicles. As I already said, it's done together with Finnish and German colleagues who prepare necessary documents and technologies to establish this infrastructure that will be able to serve such cars. The first road, the first, let's say, tests will be done next year, close to Naberezhny Chelny, and with KAMAZ plant, we work quite closely. Finns already put, let's say, a caravan of tracks where the first track has a driver, but the several following ones do not. We first of all reconstructed Scandinavian lines, and we will plan to extrapolate this experience on our roads, and I can tell you that we are well in line with Finns and Germans. Well, let's say about the soon coming future, let's say, do agree. We also believe that we do not have much time, but actually that's true. I would like to thank our speakers, to Pavel Brusser for his ability to go down to the root of the issue, for Dmitry for being able to speak with passion, but from different viewpoints. Salman for his ability to be very precise and explicit, and Roman Ostrovoy just for being involved in the construction and for explaining to many officials what you are doing. And thanks to the audience for being with us.